When my wife learned that I had hired Emily into the company, she clamored for a divorce from me. She hysterically questioned me whether I still had lingering feelings for Emily. She broke down in tears in front of our child and smashed everything in the house to pieces. I silently watched my wife, who was like a madwoman. All I could hear were her scoldings. She called me unfaithful and ungrateful. Although my wife didn't say a word and just held the child and wept, I could hear her inner thoughts. I had been thoroughly fed up with her already. Under the bright lights, the house was in a mess. Sophia seemed to have finally vented her anger. At this moment, she was sitting on the sofa with her head bowed, not knowing what was on her mind. I stood coldly by the door, but her angry shouts still kept ringing in my ears, noisy and grating. I've told you, Emily was hired by the HR department. I didn't even know about it. There was a brief moment of silence. Sophia raised her head and stared blankly behind me. I followed Sophia's gaze. Our son was cowering timidly behind the door, only showing his head nervously watching us. Today is Jack's birthday. You said you'd take him to the amusement park. Do you remember? I was stunned, and then a strong sense of guilt welled up in my heart. Sorry, you were having dinner with Emily, saying you'd introduce a job to her. I suddenly raised my head to look at Sophia, only to see a sarcastic smile on her lips. She had completely calmed down by now. The look she gave me was devoid of any emotion. David, admit it, you just can't forget Emily. What about being hired by the HR department? What about you knowing nothing? Can you deceive me? Can you deceive yourself? Let's get a divorce. Jack will be with me. It's good for you, for me, and for the child. Divorce? I frowned and carefully examined Sophia. She was wearing a t-shirt that I hadn't worn for a long time. Her hair was messy, and the glow on her face from the past was long gone, leaving only wrinkles and exhaustion. I felt relieved and laughed. Sophia, do you think you're still 18 and can do whatever you want? Look at yourself. If you divorce me, do you think anyone else will want you? Do you think you can support yourself and Jack on your own? Sophia didn't say a word. She walked straight past me and went to the room to pack her luggage. Yes, I'm not 18 anymore. So the thing I regret the most is following you when I was 18. I watched Sophia's back. Her no longer slender waist, her slovenly dressed appearance, and her struggling to carry Jack and leave. I didn't chase after her because I was certain she would come back, just like every time before. Sophia left, and the house suddenly became quiet. Since I could hear Sophia's inner thoughts, this was one of the rare quiet moments. In my ears, I hummed a song as I made myself a pot of hot tea. I was too lazy to clean up the mess on the floor. I opened my phone, and immediately over a dozen messages popped up, mostly from Emily. She said she was very grateful that I had I introduced this job to her and wanted to treat me to a meal. The last message was a selfie of hers. The woman was wearing a halter dress with her cleavage half exposed and her eyes seductive, completely different from the pure and innocent look I remembered. Before I could save it, the photo was quickly withdrawn, and Emily sent another message, in a rather self-contradictory way, saying she sent it by mistake. I watched the words typing constantly popping up on the other side and just found it funny. I didn't expect that after a few years, the once pure goddess had also learned such tricks. Reminiscing about the photo just now, I agreed to Emily's request to treat me to a meal without Sophia's nagging in my ears. I slept well and even had a rare dream, dreaming about the past. At that time, Sophia and I had just started our business. We bought a second-hand electric scooter. The battery of that shabby scooter didn't have enough power, and it couldn't move. When going uphill, Sophia would always hold me and laugh loudly. Pedal faster, David. She laughed so happily, as if once we got over that slope, all problems would be solved. In the dream, I kept pedaling with my feet on the ground and finally managed to take Sophia up that high slope. But when I looked back, the back seat was empty. Sophia was gone. Emily was standing in front, waiting for me. If there was no Sophia, Emily would be fine too. I thought of the figure I had been silently watching in high school for 3 years and resolutely walked towards Emily. When I woke up, it was already broad daylight. Sophia and Jack hadn't come back, and there was no message from her on my phone. Remembering the dream from last night, I felt a bit dazed. I checked the time. There were still more than 2 hours before the time I had agreed with Emily. I styled my hair, sprayed on some perfume, and when I went out, I deliberately drove the most expensive car in the garage. When I arrived, Emily was already there. She was wearing a proper suit and was sitting in the private room, sipping tea slowly. Somehow, I suddenly thought of Sophia and the old t-shirt she was wearing last night. Clearly, we were already wealthy, but she was still used to being frugal. Couldn't she even afford to buy a proper piece of clothing? I still remembered a few years ago at the company's annual party. Several important partners would come to attend. I specifically told Sophia to pick a more beautiful dress, but she showed up in a dress that cost less than 500 yuan. The partners almost asked directly if the company was going to go bankrupt. Several projects were almost postponed because of this. Since then, I hadn't let Sophia attend any important occasions anymore, and her taste had become worse and worse. How many years ago was that t-shirt? I can't even remember clearly, but she still took it out to wear. Looking at Emily's delicate profile, I rubbed my temples and pushed Sophia out of my thoughts. We had a very enjoyable meal. Emily told a lot of interesting stories from high school. The only thing that surprised me was that after I sent her home, she didn't invite me to go upstairs and sit for a while. Maybe the goddess was still maintaining a bit of modesty, or maybe it was a trick of playing hard to get. I thought of the photo Emily sent me last night. It was so seductive and charming. Since she had hinted at me like this, I didn't mind waiting a bit longer. I made a detour to the nearby shopping mall and bought 2 necklaces. One was for Sophia. I remembered that she seemed to have said once before that this necklace was very beautiful. It was indeed my fault to hire Emily into the company. Anyway, I still had to coax her. The other necklace was specially chosen for Emily. It was a necklace inlaid with pink diamonds. Emily was also wearing pink today, so this necklace should suit her very well. When I got home with the necklaces, the house was quiet. My heart sank. I opened the door, and the floor was still in a mess. Sophia hadn't come back. She had never been out for this long before. What was going on? Could it be that she really wanted to go through with the divorce? I kicked the clutter on the floor, and my mood inexplicably became irritable. How could it be possible? She loved me so much, and we also had Jack. Yes, there was also Jack. Sophia was 32 years old this year. She had no money, no job. Her face was full of wrinkles, and her figure had become plump. What's more, she had to take care of a child. Besides me, who would want her? Who would want a frumpy old woman? Thinking of this, my heart suddenly calmed down. Yes, only I would want her after all. She had been with me for more than 10 years and had endured a lot of hardships with me in the past. Now that the good times had come, she had even less reason to leave. It was my fault about Emily, but which wealthy man would stay with his old and worn-out wife for a lifetime? I just needed to sincerely apologize to Sophia and then take Jack to the amusement park for a trip. Then this matter would be over. In the future, I would be more discreet about my relationship with Emily and not let Sophia find out. This would be good for both sides. I made up my mind, took out my phone, and wanted to apologize to Sophia. I sent a long message earnestly, admitting my mistakes, saying that I had already fired Emily and promising never to make the same mistake again. Sophia didn't reply to me. I wasn't in a hurry. It was almost school dismissal time now. She should be picking up Jack from the kindergarten and hadn't looked at her phone. I tidied up the house. When I got close to the kitchen, I suddenly smelled a stench. It was the smell of seafood shells in the trash can. Only Jack and the family liked seafood. I suddenly remembered that yesterday seemed to be Jack's birthday. I quickly took out my phone and ordered an Ultraman for Jack. It seemed that kids all like this nowadays. After I had also cleaned up the garbage in the kitchen, I lay tiredly on the sofa. It was already past 7 o'clock, and Sophia still hadn't come back. I dialed Sophia's phone number. The phone was picked up after ringing less than twice. I smiled. The feeling of tiredness seemed to have lessened a bit. I knew Sophia loved me. She was just throwing a tantrum at most. She didn't dare to leave. Hello, is it Dad? Yes, it's Jack. Where's Mom? Mom is taking a bath. Is Dad coming to pick me and Mom up and take us home? Yes. Where are you and Mom? Dad will come and pick you and Mom up right away. Great, Mom. And I are in the house in Zikwan, Dad. Come quickly. Jack said excitedly. If Dad comes late, Mom will be snatched away by Uncle, ... Double quotes. Jack muttered something softly after that. I didn't hear it clearly. I only heard the word uncle. Sophia's voice came faintly through the receiver, and the phone was quickly hung up. Uncle, was Sophia with a man? Who was it? How could she be with another man? The house in Shuhan was only a 20-minute drive from here. I grabbed my car keys and ran out the door quickly. After running a few steps, I thought about it and then turned back to take the Ultraman with me. Along the way, I guessed all possible identities of the man, but I couldn't figure out who it was. No matter what, Sophia had been staying at home taking care of the children these years. Who could she possibly know? I managed to drive the 20-minute journey in just 12 minutes. Zikwan was an old residential area without an elevator. The lights in the corridor were on and off. I took out my phone and carefully climbed upstairs. Warm yellow light was refracted in the dim corridor. The door of the house was open. I didn't know what they were talking about, but Jack was laughing happily. I patted the dust off my body and walked in. The laughter stopped abruptly. Jack was very surprised to see me. Mom, look, I told you Dad would come to pick us up. Jack trotted over and threw himself into my arms. I looked around the house. It wasn't big. You could see the whole place at a glance. The doors of the bedroom and the bathroom were open. There was no man hiding in the house. It seemed that Jack was just talking nonsense. I breathed a sigh of relief and then looked at Sophia. Her expression was indifferent, as if she didn't care whether I came or not. She must be blaming me for forgetting Jack's birthday. I quickly handed the limited edition Ultraman in my hand to Jack. Jack didn't take it. Instead, he looked at me with a strange expression. A hand wearing a patched-up watch reached out from behind and snatched the Ultraman from my hand, casually throwing it into the trash can. Don't you even know what Jack likes? The man was holding a bag of roast duck in one hand and a few bottles of drinks in the other. He looked completely out of place with his appearance. I frowned and looked at the man. He looked very familiar, but I couldn't remember who he was for a moment. Uncle Andrew, you're back. Jack seemed to be very familiar with this Uncle Andrew. He quickly ran forward to take the things from his hands. He patted Jack's head. Then, I turned to look at me. Andrew, nice to meet you. Andrew reached out his hand to me, looking at me with a half smile, his eyes full of provocation. I frowned and looked at Sophia. Sophia, we're not divorced yet. Are you so impatient, or is it that you're arguing for a breakup with me, just for him? I looked at Andrew and suddenly had an explanation for Sophia's abnormal behavior these past 2 days. Sophia ignored me. She beckoned Jack and Andrew to go in and eat. Only then did I notice that there were already 3 pairs of chopsticks and bowls on the dining table. 3 pairs. Andrew looked at Sophia. Sophia gave Andrew a look. Andrew nodded and led Jack to the dining table. Don't worry. I hated the eye contact between them. What was their relationship? How could Andrew look at Sophia like that? And why should Sophia make him feel at ease? She was my wife. I looked at Sophia in disbelief. Sophia's expression remained cold. I'll be waiting for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll divide the property equally. Jack will be with me. No, I don't agree. Do you have an objection to the property division? The company was founded by us together. It's reasonable for me to take half too. No, I quickly grabbed Sophia to explain. We've been together for so many years. How can we get divorced? And there's also Jack. Do you want Jack to be a child? Without a father, I thought that mentioning Jack would make Sophia soften, but her expression became even colder. She broke free from me and pushed me out of the door. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Don't forget. Don't even think about it. Sophia, you're having an affair during the marriage. If you want Jack's custody, don't even think about getting a penny of the property. I was so angry that I lost my temper. I pounded on the door and shouted, but it was quiet inside. There was no sound at all. I walked down the stairs in a daze. It was already very late. The surroundings were quiet. Occasionally, I could hear a child crying. I looked up. The house on the 3rd floor was lit with a warm yellow light. I touched the velvet box in my pocket and limped along under the dim streetlights. Why? Why did she want a divorce? Didn't Sophia love me very much? I couldn't figure it out, so I simply sat down by the roadside. I seemed to be back to my childhood again. My parents were getting a divorce. Nobody wanted me. They smashed everything in the house that could be smashed to pieces. I could only run out and sit under the streetlight, looking up at the moon. There was no moon today. I suddenly thought of that dream. In the dream, Emily would be waiting. For me, yes, I still had Emily. Thinking of this, I immediately felt full of strength and drove to Emily's place at once. Downstairs at Emily's house, I was rummaging in the car for the necklace I was going to give to Emily when suddenly, I heard a familiar voice and jerked my head up. Emily was talking to a man not far away, and the two of them were walking towards me. Emily was holding the man's arm, looking extremely intimate. The blood in my body seemed to freeze, and my head was dizzy in waves. Emily seemed to recognize my car. She said something to the man and then ran over in a few steps and knocked on my car window. I forced myself to suppress the stiffness all over my body and laboriously rolled down the window. Emily was standing beside the car with a big smile on her face. What a coincidence. David, why are you here? Just passing by. Who's that? I forced myself to hold back the sour feeling in my heart and pointed at the man standing aside, asking, who is he? He's my boyfriend. We're getting married next month. David, you must come to our wedding banquet. Then a blush rose on Emily's face. Looking exactly like how she did when she gave a speech in front of the whole class in the first year of high school. I thought of the photos she sent me again. She clearly said she sent it by mistake. So was it all just a misunderstanding on my part? I don't know how I answered or how I left. When I came to my senses, I was already back home. The house was empty. The usual sounds of the children playing and my wife talking were all gone. It was eerily quiet at home. I slumped on the sofa. My phone vibrated. It was Sophia reminding me to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to handle the divorce. What had I done? For a fixation from my youth, I had given up on my wife who had shared joys and sorrows with me, and it turned out that it was all just a misunderstanding. Emily hadn't degenerated. She was still as unattainable as before. It was me. I was the one who eagerly jumped at the slightest sign. I had been successful for so many years that I thought all the women around me were the same, that they would take the initiative to approach me when they saw me. Why couldn't I resist the temptation when it came to Emily, when I could before? I gave myself a hard slap. There was a stinging pain on my face. I looked up at the ceiling and suddenly thought of that old house in Zikawan. That house was far from the city center, had no security system, and the lights in the corridor often broke down. But it was our first home, mine and Sophia's. At that time, we had just earned our first pot of gold after starting our business. Sophia planted the balcony full of sunflowers. She said we would grow vigorously towards the sun like those sunflowers. Later, just as she said, the company developed smoothly, and gradually we had many houses. But Sophia was always reluctant to move out of this old house. She said this house was different. It was home. It wasn't until Sophia got pregnant and for the sake of Jack that she was willing to move here. Yes, I sprang to my feet. The old house in Zikawan meant something different to Sophia, but she still moved. Didn't this mean that there was still a chance for everything? Yes, it must be like this. Andrew, I had never heard of him before. How could Sophia have any interaction with him, let alone that kind of relationship? Sophia's figure had gone out of shape now, and she wasn't as beautiful as before. How could a man like him possibly take a fancy to her? Yes, it must be like this. I kept comforting myself. The speed of the Maybach was getting faster and faster. As long as I could be a bit faster and explain everything clearly to Sophia, I could surely make it up. After all, I had absolutely no relationship with Emily. We just had 2 meals together. It's normal for high school classmates to have 2 meals together when they meet. As long as I explain clearly, Sophia will surely forgive me. She loves me so much. My hands were trembling with excitement. The steering wheel was turning left and right in the lonely night. The black Maybach was rampaging on the city streets like a wild beast. Finally, with a bang, I fell into a pool of blood. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. I saw the front of the white car on the opposite side was dented badly. The man in the driver's seat was covered in blood. He opened the door and staggered towards the back seat. The back door was deformed. He tried several times before he could open it and carried a woman covered in blood from the seat. I heard the sound of police sirens in the distance and also the man's crying. Finally, I thought, great, I don't have to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Sophia probably won't blame me. I slept for a long time in my dream. My 32 years flashed by like a revolving lantern. Ever since I could remember, my parents had been quarreling. Finally, when I was 7 years old, after my mother smashed the last plate in the house, she agreed to divorce my father. Neither of them wanted me. My father already had a new family, and his son was 3 years old. My mother was afraid that taking me with her would affect her remarriage, so she left me at the school gate. I stood at the school gate all day until evening, when my grandma, hunched over, took me home. From then on, I knew that I was an unwanted child. I could only study hard and study even harder and make achievements on my own to show those who didn't want me what an excellent child they had abandoned. I got into the best high school in the city. On the first day of high school, the teacher asked us to run for class cadre. Emily jumped onto the podium like a little deer. I could tell at a glance that she was a child who had grown up in a honeypot. There was no caution in her eyes, nor was there the pretentious conceit. People like her had a fatal attraction for me. My eyes followed Emily for 3 years. 3 years later, I thought I had done well in the college entrance examination and was qualified to stand beside Emily, but then I learned that her family had already arranged a better path for her. Emily went abroad. I became even more self-abased. I never knew that the future path could be paved in advance, that people could live so easily getting together with Sophia. It was unexpected for me. On an ordinary afternoon, I received a note. In the library, the note contained a girl's secret feelings. When I looked up, I saw those bright eyes. She said she was from class 3 of economics and had liked me for a long time. Would someone like me? I got together with Sophia. At first, there was no love. It was just a love-starved person grabbing onto that life-saving duckweed. Later, Sophia was really a great girl. She would pretend to have an extra portion and secretly put a chicken leg in my bowl. She would bring me a plate of dumplings on the winter solstice night and would accompany me to hand out flyers under the scorching sun. I sincerely promised to give her a wonderful future. So, after graduating from university, I gave up a stable job and chose to start a business. That period was really tough. We had to carry heavy samples and introduce our products to one company after another. In the first 2 months, we didn't earn a single penny. The two of us could only live in a cold and damp basement, hugging each other to keep warm. Sophia pointed at the flickering lights and laughed, saying they were fireworks. At that time, I made up my mind that I must earn a lot of money so that Sophia could live a life of luxury for the rest of her life. Later, the company received its first order, which was brought in by Sophia. She said the investor was an old classmate of hers named Andrew. I think, with the first order, things went much more smoothly. Afterwards, the company grew bigger and bigger, and both Sophia and I became busier and busier. It wasn't until Sophia got pregnant unexpectedly that she stepped down from the company. What did I promise her back then? I said that I could hold up the company on my own and that she could stay at home and wait for the baby to be born with peace of mind. I discovered that I could hear her inner thoughts. After she gave birth to Jack, she always told me that she was very tired and hoped that I could also help take care of Jack. At that time, the company was in a period of growth, and I was extremely busy, so busy that I didn't even have time to eat, so I hired 2 maternity nurses for Sophia, but she was always suspicious. She suspected that the nurses were not good to the baby and that they might steal things from the house. In the end, she dismissed the nurses and did everything by herself. It was also during that period that I sometimes heard her saying, "I'm so tired," even though her mouth didn't move. I was pleasantly surprised that I could hear Sophia's inner thoughts. I thought that it was proof of my love for her. So, even after a busy day at the company, I would try my best to help take care of the baby. When I got home at night, I would make milk for the baby, change diapers, and do the laundry. I just wanted to make things easier for Sophia. But what I heard changed from "I'm so tired" to "Could David please not be more of a hindrance? Could David please not hold the baby? Could David please not come home?" Gradually, I came to. I think that being able to hear my wife's inner thoughts might not be a lucky thing for me. I heard more and more complaints from Sophia about me. I admit that I was a bit tired of going home. I was surprised when Emily asked me to help her find a job. I thought that a child like her, who had grown up in love, wouldn't have to worry about such things. Later, I learned that Emily's family had gone bankrupt. The white moonlight of my youth had fallen from the pedestal. There was no reason for me not to help her, especially when I saw that Emily was asking me for help. A strange sense of pleasure rose in my heart. I knew that Sophia would be unhappy, but so what? As long as I kept it from her, she had accompanied me through so many tough days. There was no reason for her to leave now that everything was getting better, but she actually did. I was too confident, thinking that love would never change and that Sophia would always love me. But I forgot that love can be worn down. Now, isn't Jack just like me, sitting under the streetlight and not daring to go home? Many years ago, I had become the father of someone I once hated the most. The corners of my eyes were moist, as if tears had streaked down. I heard the beeping of the machines and the cries for help from the nurses. In a daze, I seemed to hear Jack's voice. He said, "Dad, don't go." When I woke up, the person sitting beside me was actually Andrew. He was peeling an apple slowly. Seeing that I woke up, he didn't even look up. Only the veins on the hand holding the fruit knife bulged. Because of the force, don't look around. Sophia and Jack aren't here. It's just me here now. I opened my mouth but found that my throat was too dry to make a sound. Andrew obviously noticed this too and silently moved the water glass on the bedside a bit further away. I reached out to get it, and it seemed that the wound on my abdomen was torn open, sending waves of excruciating pain. But after drinking a few sips of water, my throat finally felt a bit better. "Why are you here?" Andrew rolled his eyes. "I'm not like someone who tries to get sympathy by getting into an accident." Andrew said this through gritted teeth, as if I had done something heinous. He probably really liked Sophia. I couldn't help but laugh. "Riley, are you and Sophia together?" "Thanks to you." Almost when Andrew was about to say something more, Sophia suddenly walked in. Andrew quickly stuffed the half-peeled and partly eaten apple into my hand. "Sophia, he's awake. You can ask him. I didn't mistreat him." Sophia laughed and gently stroked Andrew's hair, as if to comfort him. Okay, I got it." It had been a long time since I last saw her. Sophia seemed to have changed a lot. She was wearing a well-tailored suit. There was no trace of tiredness on her face. Instead, she looked energetic. Although her figure and face hadn't changed, she had an inexplicable charm. Sophia turned to look at me with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. "That woman died. Her husband refused to settle. The police will be her ... Single quote, see soon. Once you get a bit better, go handle the divorce. As for who Jack will be with, he's sensible. Now it depends on his own decision." Only then did I remember that woman covered in blood. Was it me who killed her? I also thought of that man who struggled to open the car door. It was me who not only destroyed my own family, but also other families. I opened my mouth to say something, but Sophia turned to discuss the company's cooperation with Andrew. During the time I was in a coma, she had completely taken over the company. She had always been a good person. She was in the past, and she is now. Why did I think that she couldn't live without me? I wisely shut my mouth and listened quietly. After a long while, as if she finally remembered that there was still me, Sophia said to me indifferently, "I'll bring Jack to see you after school," and then left the ward with a stack of documents. I found that I couldn't seem to hear Sophia's inner thoughts anymore. Just as it had appeared so mysteriously, all of a sudden, this strange ability disappeared quietly again. Jack came to see me, but he seemed to like Andrew more. He kept pestering Andrew to talk about interesting things at school, and I couldn't get a word in. Andrew was more like Jack's father than I was. My wife and child have both leaned towards another man from the bottom of their hearts. I have to admit my failure. A week later, under the witness of the police, Sophia and I got divorced. All the cash and real estate properties were given to her. I only took the old house and this was the big house and good life that I had once promised her. Jack also went with her. I heard that on the day we got divorced, Andrew proposed to Sophia, and she said yes. Andrew loves her very much, more than I did. That's good. Life in prison is really tough. I should spend the rest of my life in there to atone for my sins. Extra chapter from Sophia's perspective. 3 years after marrying David, I got pregnant. The baby came at a bad time. The company was at a crucial stage of development. I didn't have any extra time or energy to take care of a child. However, David stroked my belly and smiled gently. He said he really wanted a child so that it could be a complete family. Regarding the company's affairs, he would handle everything. I just needed to take care of myself during the pregnancy with peace of mind. I knew about David's original family. He had always wanted to have a family and a child to make up for the regrets from his childhood. We had been together for so many years. David had always been a good boyfriend, a good husband, and a good boss. He could play various roles well. I believed that he could also be a good father. But things always developed in an uncontrollable direction. After Jack was born, as a new mother, I was a bit flustered and had to turn to David for help. One knew David was busy during that period. He often stayed up late. Sometimes, when the baby cried in the middle of the night and I got up to change the diaper, I could still see David was dealing with documents in front of the computer, but I was really exhausted both physically and mentally. Occasionally, when the baby spat up milk, it could make me panic for a long time. If I didn't pour out my bitterness to David and talk about the annoyance in my heart, I was afraid that I really couldn't hold on. David hired 2 maternity nurses for me, but the characters of those 2 nurses were not good. One nurse would secretly take my jewelry, and the other, in order to make the baby not disturb her sleep, fed the baby sleeping pills at night. When I found the undissolved sleeping pills in the baby's bottle, my hands were shaking with fear. I told David about this, but he believed the one-sided words of the nurses and thought that I was being overly suspicious. I didn't explain anymore. I knew he was also very tired. Husband and wife should understand each other, so I just dismissed that nurse and refused his request to hire another one. A few days later, the company's affairs seemed to be less busy. David came home a bit earlier and would also help me take care of the baby, but this made me even more frustrated. David simply didn't know how to take care of a child. The milk powder he made was either too hot or too cold, and the baby always had diarrhea after drinking it. The diaper he put on the baby was always crooked, and the clothes he washed always needed to be washed again by me. He wasn't here to help. He was here to make things worse. My workload became even greater, and I even had the thought of asking him not to touch the baby anymore and not to come back to make things worse. As if he had read my thoughts, he rarely asked about Jack's affairs anymore. Even when Jack grew up, he seldom fulfilled his responsibilities as a father. He didn't even know what Jack liked, but I thought that maybe he just didn't know how to be a good father. It would be okay if I just waited a little longer. This was the complete family. He had always been looking forward to he would learn to be a good father. Jack was very obedient. When he was 3 years old, he could already go to a daycare center. I proposed to David about going back to the company, and David was very supportive. He said that in a few days it would be the company's annual party, and many partners would come. It was a good opportunity. I was so excited that I started preparing. A month in advance, when choosing an evening dress, I had originally decided on a black strapless dress, a limited edition by a well-known designer, low-key and luxurious, which should have been very suitable for me. However, when I was shopping in the mall that day, I saw a very familiar dress. It was when we had just graduated. All our money was invested in the company, and we didn't even have enough cash to have a full meal. Once, when passing by the mall, I saw this dress. At that time, I was just a girl who loved beauty. I stared at this dress in the window for a long time until David noticed my strangeness. Had on us, but it wasn't even enough for a fraction of the price of this dress. David held my hand and told me that he would definitely buy this dress for me when we made money, but later, we were so busy that we both forgot about it. I thought that this dress had a certain meaning for both him and me. The annual party was just a formality. Those partners already knew me and recognized my abilities. It didn't matter if I wore this dress, so I bought this discounted dress. The discounted price was less than 500 yuan, only half of the original price. When I excitedly wore this dress to attend the annual party, David's originally smiling face immediately fell. I didn't expect that. In just over 3 years, everything had changed. Those partners thought that since I was a woman and had given birth to a child, I should take good care of the child. David thought that I had embarrassed him by wearing that dress. He had completely forgotten about that dress. He had also completely forgotten the promises he had made to me in the past. David rarely came home. I could only look for the one husband from one old thing after another until I found out that he was having dinner with Emily. That day was Jack's birthday. Not only was he absent, but he wasn't even willing to tell me the truth. I knew that I couldn't deceive myself anymore. He couldn't play the role of a father well, and now he couldn't even play the role of a husband well. I proposed divorce, extremely resolute. Fortunately, Jack liked Andrew very much. It didn't matter if David couldn't be a good father. Jack would have a new father in the future.